All right, so this is a Birds of a Feather session of the Quarkus team. So maybe we should introduce the Quarkus team and we'll start with the ladies. We have Holly here, you saw her at the keynote.
Hi, good afternoon. So I've been with the Quarkus team for about 6 months, so don't ask me anything.
Hi, I'm Ioannis. I've been working with Quarkus pretty much since the beginning. I mostly work on things related to Quarkus and the whole container and Kubernetes experience. So ask me only these, and the rest you can ask George. So George?
George does everything. Just ask everything to George.
Hi, that's definitely not true. I've been around Quarkus like almost the beginning, not exactly the beginning, where Dimitris was with like 4 or 5 folks and working day and night to get a prototype ready. But since then, yeah, I've been around. Holly, I have to say, is deceiving you. She actually writes extensions, so she definitely knows a lot more than she says she knows. And she's basically got an extension running. I mean, wrote an extension way faster than like anyone I've ever seen. So that's excellent.
Care to say a few things about what was the extension?
Yeah, I think Holly should say that actually, because it was her idea. It was a great idea.
The extension was business critical functionality that was missing in Quarkus, so I'm very proud of myself for spotting the gap. What the extension did is, what if I really want my logs to go into Minecraft rather than into Jaeger? And so that was what the extension does. So you can have Quarkus running and everything turns up in Minecraft, and if you get an exception, obviously that's quite serious, so you get an explosion in Minecraft. And if you get an event, you get a chicken in Minecraft just because it was Minecraft and so you get a little time-stamped chicken. There's a video of it.
So you mean that you actually converted the logs in a format that someone will actually look at?
Sort of, yeah.
And you're...
The only problem is that there's too many chickens, so I've got an issue for doing chicken cleanup.
Yeah, no, keep it. I have this. Okay. And I'm Dimitris. I've been managing the Quarkus team since almost the beginning. So we are here. We're at the BOF. We have the intro in the morning. There was a workshop. This is a discussion now, and then there will be a deep dive afterwards. And the idea here is to just, ask any questions you may have about Quarkus, life, whatever, but Quarkus related. In fact, I tried in the app to ask people, maybe you should put a question there, and they put 2 questions, like why would a team select Quarkus and Spring Boot versus Quarkus, the internal question. But we can add, more stuff now. So maybe we just start with the one that we have. So why would the team select Quarkus? Maybe I should ask you first, who's using Quarkus already, in any way? Okay, like 4 people. So maybe we should ask you, why you use Quarkus? So can we get the microphone?
Yeah, let's start from over there and make our way here. You seem like a familiar face.
Yes, we do. Actually, spoken about Quarkus adoption in teams. We were in the case that we were starting from clean ground, so we did have a green field ahead of us. And the question was to have something like really close to the Jakarta specifications, providing all the enterprise functionality that actually Spring Boot would provide, which is the de facto standard back then of enterprise applications. But on the same time be, let's say, as close and familiar to the enterprise standards that we set, the Java 2E enterprises, and also the goodies that Quarkus comes with, which is like the great runtime initialization and also the throughput, the increased throughput with the use of Guardian. So basically these were the great advantages and reasoning. So close to the Jakarta specification, following these examples and paradigms, on the same time providing huge benefits on the resources and the runtime performance. So this was the combination that actually drove us there. Our company had like legacy applications running on J2E Java Enterprise framework, and they wanted to be as close as that as they could be to that.
Maybe you want to say which company you work for?
Yes. Actually, all four guys here were working for Scientific Games Europe, the Athens group, and right now I can safely say that we're not missing Spring Boot at the moment. So every challenge that we would like to overcome, we could either with extensions and the various modules that Quarkus provides, or with a small, let's say, alteration of our design in order to be compliant with Quarkus itself. So until now we are very, very happy with it, and also we are being evangelists of it in our own organization. I'm not sure whether some of my colleagues would like to add anything here.
I've seen both sides, because in my previous company I happened to be on a migration. They had Spring Boot, I was at Vodafone, and they had a serious problem on resources. So one microservice would require one CPU, which is very high for the things they did. So the memory consumption was very high as well, and the boot time was very high as well. So deployments were taking a lot of time without a reason. So they started assessing framework. So one option was to go Node.js, or the other was completely different stuff. The other was to go Micronaut, other stuff. But they then found out about Quarkus, and Quarkus was like the best thing that ever happened. I mean, this is not an exaggeration. I mean, I happened to be at the moment where they had to build common libraries that work for both Spring and Quarkus, and the Quarkus side project was completed, let's say, in a month, and the Spring had to be done in 3 months, because some things that Quarkus offers out of the box in Spring are very difficult to implement. Aside from higher throughput and at production, lower resources and stuff. So eventually, when they migrated, the Quarkus resources dropped down to 0.3 CPUs, 300 milli CPUs, let's say, and 0.3 gigabyte RAM. So it was like a lot of resources to save. So yeah, if everyone thinks about if they should adopt Quarkus, I think they should, because the practice shows that it is very good. And it has very good development experience as well.
Test. Yeah. So you were saying.
Thank you. Okay. Well, thank you very much. Yeah, indeed, we were aware of the Vodafone use case. I mean, they actually saw the presentation from Dimitris from 2019, as far as I know, and took it from there. So that was. Oh, you were there too. Excellent. Thank you. Let's see who else wants to share their experience from running Quarkus in production. Somebody from around here had their hand up. Great.
I was part of one of the resources, so
Oh, cool.
I would not anything more.
Okay.
But I can share my experience right now.
Excellent.
Hello. Right now I'm working for free now, and we're starting to add some reactivities to our microservices. So we're experimenting with web flags and Quarkus Reactive on the other hand, just to figure out which will cover best use cases. So this is now what I have to say. And can I also ask my question? One good index of how a framework is performing is the adopters. And I would like how this is going for Quarkus.
This is a good question because we don't know the answer. We don't have a reliable way to know exactly how many people use Quarkus. So it's like from anecdotal evidence. There are some thoughts to add some, let's say, telemetry features, maybe when you do a build or something, so we get a ping that we know, oh, someone's using Quarkus. Well, we see more and more people using Quarkus, definitely. Just by going out and talking to customers. If you look at GitHub, in the community, it's like, you know, going up and up and up. And we see, let's say, more conservative users now picking up on Quarkus. Banks, insurance companies, the army. So, yeah, job listings, yeah, it's another nice proxy. Oh yeah. We have in our blog, we have a tag called user story, and there, you know, whoever of you wants to contribute one user story, we have, I don't know, maybe 13 or so. And it's usually the same story again and again, you know. They wanted something new or they want to solve a particular problem. Like I remember in Vodafone, they had a serious problem with the logging service. It was taking 6 seconds to boot or to reply. And they brought it down to like 2 or 1. So that was a very green choice for the environment as well. And your pocket. Okay, other questions?
Even though we don't have the exact numbers as Dimitris said, we do have some metrics when it comes to how Quarkus is performing as an open source project, and in that regard it's going really well. We saw in the presentation we had in the morning that it has over 700 contributors, more than 10,000 stars on GitHub, which, you know, it's a sign that awareness is filling up and people's getting excited, and the community is continuously growing.
We were really annoyed because we were at a conference in Portugal earlier in the year, and we were just below 10,000, and we thought, oh, isn't this going to be nice? We're all going to be together as a team in Portugal, and we'll get to 10,000 and then we can celebrate. But we couldn't stop people, they kept starring it. We were like, no, we're not going to be able to get that milestone in Portugal. So we got after that milestone.
Thank you for your presentation. Nice. A quick question. Which is the best way in order to endorse Quarkus in an existing project, a big project?
That's a great question, which George is going to answer.
I'll do my best. Okay, so we have seen folks that have large, like Java EE applications migrate to Quarkus relatively easily, right? Because most of the APIs that we use, most of the widely used Java EE APIs are implemented in Quarkus. Right? So you have JAX-RS, you have transactional support, JPA, all the stuff that's still relevant today, right? There are folks that have still EJB, and those folks can't migrate to Quarkus, right? Because we're not going to implement EJB. But we on the other hand, there are folks again that have to integrate with legacy systems. So they might have this application that is fairly modern, and they can port it sans a single part that needs to talk to this legacy mainframe or whatever. So there is a lot of discussion, and Dimitris knows a lot more about this, that to add even more capabilities to Quarkus to be able to talk to legacy systems. Because our initial thought was, okay, Quarkus will only be for like greenfield projects, right? Everything that's brand new, it's a no-brainer to use Quarkus. But then we came to see that the reality is that there's not only a lot of greenfield stuff, there's also a lot of folks that are brownfield, meaning that they are trying to update their entire architecture, but some components are stuck in these old technologies because they need to talk to something over this weird protocol that like was only supported like JBoss 6 or whatever. So Dimitris can talk about that.
Normally, the most easy way is if you have an existing application, you try to take a small bit out of it, as they say, strangle the monolith, and rewrite it with Quarkus, so set up a small team to do this and experiment and see how that goes, and if it's successful, you roll it out to, more components, the rest of the team. I think that's what most people end up doing, yeah?
Yeah, the one other thing I'd add, so one, as Dimitris said, one is get the evidence for how expensive it's going to be, because if it's cheap, it's really easy to make the case. But then the other thing is put yourself in your shoes, but then also in the shoes of your stakeholders. So probably the reason that you want to use Quarkus, just guessing, is something like, oh, the thing I'm using is really annoying, it's really slow, I hate the API, I want the developer experience to say. But the people making the decision maybe don't really care about your developer experience, they think you're just complaining. So what problem do they have? Because they probably do have a problem, and it may be one that Quarkus can fix. So like as we heard with Vodafone, they had the problem that it was really, really expensive for them to continue using what they were using because of the resource usages. So then you say, well, secretly, I want to do this to make my life easy, but I'm going to tell everybody that we're doing it in order to lower resource usage. So, figure out what your stakeholders need.
We have an issue with real time and all that stuff. So I think, we have an issue with real time and how much time each developer should wait in order to start up and make a change and all that stuff. So that's why I asked you, maybe if it can be integrated in a module separately and then also do that with all the other stuff. But question is regarding the database. If you have a monolith database and you have multiple ways, let's say, to talk to database, maybe you have inconsistencies. How can you cope with that? If let's say, migrate to, let's say, one project, how maybe there is a risk regarding that part? Because for us, database is a big issue. Sorry.
I want to understand the question a little bit better. So, tell us a few things about your architecture. Like, do you have a big monolith that talks to your monolithic?
We have now we move to more modular architecture, but we are in the middle of that. So, okay, we may use a project with a module to integrate. We have the monolith system, and we have a big database, and we try to be more modular and extract services and be more microservices oriented. So the question is, okay, when you try to introduce something new, there is an issue with backwards compatibility or database related, and if performance is a big issue, then you may make issue. That's why I went sort of about the
One thing that I want to add is that when you move from the monolithic application towards microservices architecture, I think that it's generally accepted that it's a good idea not to use monolithic databases. So I would say that as you slice the monolith into pieces, database parts follow along. At least this is my view, which also shields you from things like inconsistencies and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Now, besides all that, Quarkus itself doesn't have to do with how you handle the inconsistencies in your application. However, I think that it's a perfect use case to start building with microservices from monolith, and there Quarkus is an excellent solution.
Yeah, and I'll just add to what Ioannis said, 2 points that are like tangibly related. So first, like with the monoliths you're breaking up, Quarkus has great support for things like if you're trying to emulate like transactionality across different microservices, Quarkus has support for like Saga pattern via Debezium, right? So Debezium is another RedHat project based on change data capture. So it provides, let's say, an easy way, but Holly knows we can make it even easier, way to implement Saga patterns, so for eventual consistency in your microservice architecture. Okay, yeah. So the Saga pattern in the microservice architecture world tries to solve the problem where in a monolith you were talking to, let's say, 2 different databases, and you could have the same transaction, or like it would maybe the same database, but you're updating like 5 different tables. So all that could happen in the same transaction. And in the microservices world, where you're like writing something to a database and you're writing to Kafka or whatever, you don't have that same guarantee, right? So you have to switch your mindset to something where usually what you want to do is write to the database as the source of information and have those changes made to the database propagated to the rest of your architecture. And usually the way you do that is by extracting the changes from the database and moving them as messages via Kafka to like other components of the architecture. You want to ask?
Yeah, I would just like to add that the Quarkus team has a podcast kind of thing on YouTube, which is called Quarkus Insights. And if I'm not mistaken, last Monday we had an episode which was about those topics. So if this is something that is of interest to you, do make sure to check the episode out.
Yeah, and one other thing I was thinking about hearing your question just from what we were talking about on that Quarkus Insights last Monday is I think certainly at least those of us who are engineers of a certain age, we have this tendency, that you want to make everything as normal as possible and you want to reduce the duplication. But the tendency now, because developer time is expensive and storage is cheap, is to have things duplicated. And so you want to be denormalizing the data. And so it might be that even though your end game is Quarkus, you actually want to start at the database layer, not think about Quarkus at all, but just start pulling that database apart. And in doing so, you're going to duplicate information. But that's okay, that's the modern style. Thank you.
So basically, those are architectural problems. They're not Quarkus
No.
specific.
One more thing though that is Quarkus related is that you are not going to find a better ORM experience than with Quarkus. And I'm not just, I'm serious, because the Hibernate team is RedHat team, right? And it works extremely closely with the Quarkus team. Actually, one of the founders of Quarkus, the technical founders, was the Hibernate ORM lead, right? Simon. So, not only do you have the best developer experience, you also have the best experience when it comes to performance, right? Because the folks, you have an intersection of folks that develop Quarkus and develop Hibernate, right? So you get the best of all the latest performance fixes or issues that could get addressed, do get addressed in Quarkus.
Well, it's not just Sunny, it's Gavin and the team who made Hibernate. Who knows how old is Hibernate as a project? Before, I think it's 2002. I think it became 20 years old like recently with version 6 and Hibernate Reactive, so maybe it's older than some of you here. So, and it's true that in Quarkus we say, okay, it's new. The way we wire things together, it's new, but the components we use, some of them are pretty old. We have a piece that's even older than Hibernate, is the transaction manager, which was started in 1995. It's a project called Ariana, and it's still going, after all these years. So there are components that are very well debugged, tested, and so on. Other questions?
You saw before some properties of AWS Lambda, and I would like to ask how well Quarkus operates in this environment. Are there AWS Lambda or SNA functions, and the support of cloud SDKs?
I can try like a quick one. Well, we have some extensions for Lambda specifically. We have a project called Funky, which acts as a uniform API between different function providers. Plus, of course, you can compile to native and you get really small executable. So I think it works great on serverless. You containerize.
For AWS specifically, there's a specific, how do you call it, manifest or whatever. So it's some kind of zip that Amazon knows how to deploy. I don't remember what it's called. So all of that is like, let me say it's orthogonal to Quarkus, right? But what Dimitris says is that we have a lot of integrations with all three major cloud providers, and we are also in constant contact with folks from those teams as well. Like recently, we want like more Azure implementation.
Yeah, we work very closely with those guys. I will talk with Microsoft, with the team that makes the serverless option. Microsoft specifically, they have other challenges because they have a different, let's say, container for those things, which has an overhead, and even if Quarkus is super fast, this still takes time to put. So I think it's in their interest and our interest to make this work nicely, because all those guys, they just want more traffic for their cloud. So Quarkus is an excellent platform for these kinds of problems.
It's more of a technically oriented question based on the demo we saw earlier regarding the dev bootstrap, how it starts and how it integrates with Docker. Basically, can you customize it to connect to an already running instance instead of launching a Postgres built-in?
Well, I'd say that if you have an already running instance, you could just configure the URL through the application, the properties, and connect directly to the instance. And there is no need to use the concept of dev services we demonstrated earlier. I don't know if Georgios knows another use case that it would make sense to somehow pass to the dev services a URL to an existing service.
There is and it's not exactly the same, but there is the case where you might need like two different microservices talking to the same Kafka, for example. So in that case, we do support, in a Kafka dev service, we do support like connecting to an already existing Kafka dev service that has been launched by a different one. So there is discovery.
You refer to the shared mode.
Yeah, the shared thing. So, but that I think that happens automatic. For databases, yeah, I can't think of anything additional to what you mentioned. Other questions? Spring Boot versus Quarkus. You want to take this one? Well, I can.
So, in the past, I used to be a Spring user and a Spring aficionado myself. So, I'll share my experience when it comes to Spring versus Quarkus. So, I like Spring. I don't have bad things to say about Spring. I especially like the fact that it educated a generation of developers and made concepts like dependency injection and stuff like that digestible. But times change. Modern times and modern problems require modern solutions. So it's time to start looking at something beyond what Spring has to offer and bring to the table. Nowadays, it's very important to be able to start applications really, really fast. We heard in the previous question about lambdas, where the startup time is essential. We've been talking about green deployments and CO emissions and stuff like that, which Paul is really, really passionate about. And all those require to have the most efficient possible runtime to build on top. And I think that nowadays it's pretty much accepted that Quarkus outperforms and is a more efficient framework than Spring by far. So we like Spring for what it meant a couple of years now, but I feel that nowadays it's time to move to a more modern solution. Want to add something to that, Holly?
Another empirical evidence we have from the people that made the transition was when you migrate to Quarkus, normally you get less code because Spring has a lot of boilerplate. So you end up with about 30% less code for the same thing. So that's another very interesting outcome that you can sell to your managers beyond, I'm gonna use the cloud bill, so it's gonna cost less. So yeah, let's try this, make this prototype and yeah.
I would like to add something else. Startup times and efficiency are one thing, but I'm pretty sure that you witnessed in the demos, especially in the morning, the developer experience and what it means, how easy it makes the developer life. So you start using a framework like Quarkus, and somehow development becomes much more exciting because it's easier. You have a very, let's say, faster feedback loop, which is really, really important, both in being happy with what you do and seeing the fruit of your labors, take place in front of your eyes with just changing code, no need to rebuild, no need to redeploy, and stuff like that. And beyond all that, the feedback loop thing that Quarkus proposes is also an excellent way of learning and picking up new frameworks and new technologies, which in my opinion makes Quarkus an amazing learning companion.
Something else we see, we realize now that with this, let's say, build time technology, the runtime, the extensions are becoming smarter in trying to understand what you're trying to do at build time, And then when we run in this, let's say, dev mode, we can now offer the user some hints. So for example, we didn't see this in the demo in the morning, but we have a way where you say, I'm going to write a REST endpoint with a reactive technology. So we use REST-easy reactive. So you write your code, and then as we look at your code, we can see, for example, that, you have this endpoint that is actually, let's say, blocking. you haven't marked it in your code with a proper annotation. And we catch this and we can produce a warning to you and say, look there, the performance will not be, great. So maybe you can fix this. And it's, things that were really unheard of before to, for the frameworks to like correct your code or propose changes. And now those are possible. And as technology evolves and the extensions become more smart, I think we will see more and more feature like this coming from extension writers, for which you absolutely they will come for you for free. Just recompile your code and you get more value just by recompiling your code. Without having to change anything. So I think this pushes the technology forward a bit, interesting things will come. I'm sure there will be competition coming because unless you do something similar, I just don't see how you can beat Quarkus in performance terms. I don't think there is any other way really. So we're looking forward to the competition adopting our ways.
I actually heard of an Oracle project, Helidon. Is it something similar, something that you compare to?
So Helidon was actually around before Quarkus, the first version. The first version, I would say, was pretty useless in the sense that it didn't bring anything new to the table, right? When Quarkus and Micronaut came out, they were the really new things that actually brought new things to the table, right? Helidon at that point didn't bring anything. It didn't have any build time optimization. It didn't have any GraalVM integration. It had a weird API split between the functional thing and the non-functional thing. Whereas in Quarkus, everything is integrated, and you can use whatever you want in mix and match. Now, I'm assuming that what you're referring to that you recently saw is where Helidon plans to, let's say, rebase onto Project Loom. So Project Loom is the new Java 19 hype where you can have virtual threads, which means on the JVM now you can have 1 million threads instead of 5,000, 10,000. I'm assuming that's what you're referring to, and it looks very promising. No question about it. I mean, Project Loom looks great for a future, very far, let's say medium to long-term future for the Java platform. And Helidon seems to be betting heavy on that. That they're that they'll be the go-to framework. I don't think that will be the case because Quarkus already has support for Loom and has for a few months. Experimental support, I should add. But that support is only going to get better over time. We have a lot of people that are looking at this problem. But basically, the problem is we're trying to bridge the reactive world with the Loom world, right? So with Loom, the promise is that you don't have to write reactive code anymore. You only write blocking code, and the JVM automatically figures out to not block anything. That sounds great, but it has a few problems. First problem is that the ecosystem is not ready. If you try it with any current JDBC driver, the performance will be abysmal. And it'll be abysmal because, although theoretically the threads shouldn't be blocking anything, they do, because there are certain things that when you do in Loom, like synchronization, that causes a lot of contention. So there's that one problem, right? The ecosystem isn't ready, but it probably will be in a few years. That's the first problem. The second problem is that almost for the past, 5 at least years, everything IO related in the Java world is based on what? It's based on Netty. Netty is the go-to IO framework for every network client out there. Thinking messaging like Kafka or Pulsar or any reactive drivers like Sonder or whatever, everything is built on Netty, right? So it is going to be either impossible or very far out in the future that all these drivers suddenly switch to Project Loom and depend on Java 22 as their baseline, right? Who's going to go to Java 22 And when is that going to happen? Like 10 years? Like, who's running Java 17 now in production? Like, one person, right? Everybody else, I'm assuming, I'm hoping is running Java 11 and not Java 8. Okay, so
Do we still have people using Java 8?
okay, so that gives you a sense of like when everybody will be able to migrate to this new Java 22, where Project Loom will be the thing. So maybe as a IO layer is not going to go away anytime soon because there's so much code that just works out there, right? And it works great. So our challenge as like innovators in the space is to bridge these two different networking layers. And there's a lot of work internally, a lot of thought going into this and how we're going to do it. But I'm extremely confident that like whatever situation we land in, Quarkus will continue to have like the best performance, first of all, and second of all, the most complete like networking integrations. Because what Heldon has announced now is like, great, okay, we implement like HTTP 1 and 2, but that's it, right? On Loom, I mean, okay, that's cool. What about all the other stuff? Right? Who's going to rewrite all the other networking protocols that are out there? Anybody else want to add something?
I think I'm the oldest in the group. And by experience, I can tell you that everything that touches the network breaks so easily. So easily. So anytime you think, we come up with a better network stack, or threading model, blah, 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 it will take years to really debug it and make it work. And so Loom and Network I/O, I think there are great ideas there. It will take a lot of time to roll them to the wider community and make it really robust. We have another maybe 10 minutes. Anyone? Because Okay, I'll take one from the back.
Thank you. Okay, so my question was really good questions and answers that watched the introduction a month ago. My main question, I came from a background that I work in a company that has a really big application, Java application, lots of modules, lots of custom things actually. So the ORM is not like a big problem. But what I would like to ask, I'm very excited with the development experience, that's for sure. What I would like to ask is how easy is it to wrap things in a Quarkus way or to do custom things in Quarkus?
What's a custom thing? Like what?
Like changing the behavior of the ORM, for instance, to do something else. For instance.
I think it's very easy. You just play with the configuration.
I don't have something else to add on that.
Yeah, the one other thing I'd add is it may be that an extension is what you want. So we see sort of two categories of extension writers. One is the library authors, optimizing, either making it work in Quarkus, if for some reason it doesn't work in Quarkus, or adding that super developer experience. So that's one category of extension writers. The other is people who want to take advantage of those APIs, but to give some custom behavior to their own application. So you could do things like bytecode rewriting, or some of the things that you might have done with aspects in the past, for example, you can do via an extension. It's different from an aspect because it happens at build time, so you get that super fast behavior, but it kind of feels dynamic, and there's a lot that you can do with that, including making chickens appear in Minecraft, if that's the way that you want to go.
Yeah, that's an excellent point, and I would say that that's like the final journey, right? So I want to bridge basically what you two said. So Dimitris said start from the configuration, and Holly said you could go to extension. There's usually sometimes a middle route, which is that a lot of Quarkus behavior is exposed as CDI beans, right? So a lot of the time you can override a specific CDI bean that does something, like configures something or changes something else, much in the same way that you do it in Spring Boot, right? So Spring Boot has starters where you like have this conditional on bean thing, and you provide your own bean and it changes it. Quarkus has the exact same idea, but everything is configured to build to it, right? with all the optimizations that brings. So I would say like it's a three-step process. First of all, if there's configuration, which there is for a lot of things, you use that. That's the easiest. If that's not enough, and there's a CDI way to change it, that's excellent. It's just CDI. Most people either know CDI or Spring DI. It's pretty much equivalent. It's very easy to use. And the third way, like where you can like you could go full crazy if you want, is the extensions, right?
I'd like to provide an example because I had a recent experience with some clients that wanted to add Quarkus support for fine-grained authentication, which was something that was not directly supported by the Quarkus security mechanism, and they chose to follow a hybrid of approaches. They created some custom clients for communicating with third-party FGA providers, but they wire things in Quarkus following the approach as described by George. So they use CDI and they use the interceptors in order to intercept things and put there the logic that they needed. And I also like to add that if you want to know more about creating custom extensions, you need to attend to the next session. Should be right about a few minutes, yeah. Other questions?
I wanted to ask about what should we expect next? What's in the roadmap for Quarkus? So you have already mentioned some things about catering to the needs of legacy applications and integrating with them. What else should we expect?
Okay, so like you mentioned, there is a lot of talk about communicating with legacy systems. Like which legacy systems there is, that's up for debate, and it's probably like customer driven, I would say, right? So then the other important part that people are looking at is integrating better with various APIs cloud providers have and their various SDKs. There's work going on around that. Oh, right, yeah, very important. So how many of you know that Java EE no longer exists and it's been renamed to Jakarta, right? Okay, excellent. How many know how painful it is to move from Java EE to Jakarta? Excuse me? Excellent. So, very, very good point. So, at some point, every library out there and framework is going to switch from Java EE, so the Javax packages, to the Jakarta packages, right? Spring has announced that I think we'll do that in like Spring 6, which is supposedly in November or something like that. We have an ongoing effort, which from the status update I saw yesterday is almost complete. Basically, we are in parallel, everything we're doing in Quarkus, in parallel, we're also like porting it, let's say, to Jakarta 10. So at some point very soon, we will make the switch as well, right? So flip the switch, and everywhere we had like Javax transaction, now you'll have Jakarta transaction. Like, that doesn't sound like much from a feature perspective, but it's important because the whole ecosystem is going to go there, and it will like enable new things. Like there'll be a new JPA at some point with perhaps like the state session API that I really have. Or there's some new features in JAX-RS, like for multi-part support, where we have our own custom support now, but it'll be specified by Jakarta. What else is on the road now? Can you folks think of anything? What else is like stands out? Yeah, I can't. Yeah, I mean, there's always like, it's kind of hard because there's always like small improvements going on, and like there's always developer experience things. Like Holly really wants to get our like contract testing story in place because now we don't have a good solution. So at some point we'll have that as well. But there's always these things, small things that might be more important to other some folks.
Just out of, it's our goal not to do like big releases. We want incrementally every month to deliver something new, some bug fixes, some new feature, and avoid, we debated a lot of time, we're going to have a version 2 of Quarkus. The same is going to happen soon. Now we're going to have a version 3 with the Jakarta namespace. It's like, we want those to be as easy and painless to do upgrades. And of course we're waiting from you as well, are you missing some feature in Quarkus that's really critical for what you're doing? We already heard out, we need JCAA to talk to old, system. Yeah, there you go. Some folks want web services support, which can be like a quite big topic, or maybe we can reduce it to a subset that will solve your problem. That's another ask that's been hanging for some time. We're very careful with performance. We continuously run performance suites. If something starts degrading, the team is very fast to figure out what's going on there. Yeah, I can't think of anything else right now, so.
Hello, I would like to ask a more netty-related question. A couple months ago, there was a very interesting podcast with some performance engineers that they showed us a very impressive benchmark with I/O Uring, with a number of syscalls that is happening on the core of the Linux kernel. But we haven't heard anything from them.
Yeah, so that's a very good question, and it ties into the previous question of what new features we were looking at. So, as you know, a Quarkus I/O is based on Vertex, which is also based on Netty. So I would say the Vertex folks are working with the Netty folks on I/O Uring, and the initial benchmarks that they have done seem extremely impressive, right? I mean, it seems to be magical in the sense that you almost get a free huge performance upgrade. Now, for what it's worth, we don't control Netty, right? The main contributors of Netty are paid by Apple, but they also have a huge interest in moving to this stack because, you understand, it's Apple, right? They have a huge amount of services which they have their own huge architecture that is very network based. So once that lands, we will definitely pick it up very, very quickly because we are also interested in it, and we are in a way also contributing to that effort, and we'll have that in Vertex. Once it's available in Netty, we'll have that in Vertex, and you'll be able to see that performance upgrade immediately. I should also add, related to Netty but not I/O Uring, there are also a few potentially very, very big performance improvements contributed by our RedHat performance team to Netty. So there's these very, very obscure cases where the JIT, the JVM JIT, cannot properly create efficient but binary code, right? Because of the way Netty's written, right? If you look at the code, it looks normally you should say this looks great, it should work. But we had a performance engineer look at it, and he thought that, okay, this, for some reason, this isn't performing as good as it should, and he spent like 2 months on this, and was able to determine that some like instance of checks in Netty were causing like a 30% reduction in throughput. So with his fixes to Netty, so again, a RedHat performance team member that works closely with the Quarkus team has opened already, I think, 2 or 3 pull requests, maybe one that is yet to be merged. But once those are in, you'll get an automatic, like in some cases, 30% increased throughput just by like bumping to the next Quarkus version, which will include like this latest Netty version. So my point here is that, as Dimitris has mentioned multiple times in his talks, is that RedHat works up and down the stack, right? We have people that work from like the lowest layer of the network stack to the top, software stack to the top layer. So when you get all these people together, you can do like a lot of great things.
Which reminds me that we also work on the GraalVM. We participate in the community there. We help them add ARM support because we want native to run on cheap devices, either to lower your cloud bill or to address what's called the edge use case for telecoms that build data centers close to your mobile phone, and you want small runtimes and executables to run. So we're very interested also in telecoms use cases, edge, adding, extending support in GraalVM for new garbage collectors. We have a team working there on the Sinadoa garbage collector. So as George says, we work also very low in the stack to enable all the application all the way up. And I think with that, we can close the session. Thank you very much for sticking with us for an hour. And for the crowd that's really hardcore, there's another session which is more like deep technical by our guys here. So if you want to try your luck, stay for another hour. So thank you very much.